Hello everyone, my name is Roya and today I am coming to you with the books that I've read so far in January. So I read 6 books in the month of January and I also DNF'd an additional book which I will get to at the end before you guys start hating me too early in this video. But anyway, so one of the books that I wanted to talk to you guys about today that I finished this month is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, and this is a book that comes out next month. This is an arc that I got at BEA, and I really liked it, but it wasn't quite as amazing as I had hoped it would be because a lot of people have been raving about how good this book is so far, and so I heard nothing but good things, but ultimately I did have a few issues with it as well. Some of the world building aspects were actually very unique, and I was pretty impressed. So it was clearly a very well thought out book, and I also loved that there were some queer ladies in this, and they are main characters, and so I absolutely loved that. However, my issues with this book were mostly to do with the character development. So all the characters felt very flat and one-dimensional. We didn't get a whole lot of well-rounded characters, and we also didn't get a whole lot of well-rounded character relationships either. So for example, there are actually a few romantic relationships that take place during this book, and we don't see them develop at all, even though they're mostly between main characters. We just see, like, oh, they know each other, and then suddenly, oh, they're in love. We don't actually see them falling in love at all. That sort of thing. So none of the actual character development aspects really happened at all. It just sort of jumped to, you know, this character thinks this now, and we didn't see any of that. Throughout this entire book, that didn't sell me on the characters. I thought that the stuff that they did was really badass, and just overall, you know, the concepts of who these characters are is really clever, but I just didn't get to see them as people. There was like this wall between me and the story and the characters, and that was kind of a huge bummer. And then another thing too is that one of the main characters is this dragon rider chick who her whole aspect of the story does not tie into anything else until almost the end of the story, and so I literally just felt like I was reading two completely different stories, one of that chick and then one of everything else. Like, they almost could have been two completely separate books. So I failed to see, like, kind of how that tied in together until the very end. So that was kind of weird to me, because that was a significant part of the story, and yet we didn't see that tie into the rest at all. And she was a main character. So I don't know, I just thought that was really odd. Ultimately, this is a very good book. It just fell flat in those areas, and I did think that the world building was really good, and the concepts that this book came up with were very clever. There were some really interesting aspects. It did take about half the book to really get to those, so for the first half of the book I kind of thought it seems kind of normal to me. It didn't seem like anything special, but then halfway through the book, the special things about this book really picked up. I did read another arc this month, and that is In Paris with You by Clementine Beauvais. I got this arc at Y'all West, and this is a love story told in verse that's actually translated from French, and it is about these two people who met when they were teenagers and now they're adults, and they liked each other back then, but they never got together. And my issue was kind of, like, this is a pretty good book, but there's a reason that's being kept from the reader, why they never got together back then, and when you do find out what that is, it's very anticlimactic, and there isn't any particular reason for it. And I also felt like we didn't quite get to know the people very much, but ultimately, you know, for what it is, it's a pretty good book. It's short, it's a quick read. Then I read the last 3 books in the Air Awakens series out of the 5 books that there are. So I read Earth's End, Water's Wrath, and Crystal Crowned, and these are by Elise Kova, who, if you don't know, is kind of the biggest name out there in self-published YA fantasy. So this series is one that I actually read the first 2 books of years ago, back in my first year or 2 being on BookTube. Like, the first one was not my favorite, the second one was really good, but now that I've read the rest of the series, the third one is probably my favorite. I really liked that one. I was so close to giving it 5 stars, but I just didn't quite. I think it was maybe a 4.5. And then the last one, Crystal Crowned, it was probably my least favorite in the whole series, because while it was still good, I did think that a lot of things were missing, namely just some of the things that happened were very convenient because it's kind of wrapping up the whole story. And I didn't buy some of the things that happened with regards to how much time went by. So there's very little time goes by between the fourth book and the fifth one, and like literally less than a week probably. And that's not enough time for everyone in the entire kingdom to catch wind of, you know, what has happened, the major events that have taken place in between those two books, because basically a whole apocalypse happens practically, and yet in only the span of maybe a week, the whole kingdom has undergone a complete change, and everyone already knows like they're supposed to be following somebody different, blah 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 blah. And it seems kind of weird to me. That didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I didn't really buy that in that short of a time that would happen, because that would take like 6 months at the least. You would. And also the villain of this book is someone who we don't get a lot of time with as a villain, because he's kind of a surprise villain in the fourth book, but you do kind of see it coming. It's pretty much spelled out for you earlier in that book what is going to happen and what's going on, but then we really don't see this dude as a villain very much at all, so there's really no character development where the villain is concerned. However, I do really adore the romance in these books. It is so good. I think in a way the romance is part of what makes this series one that would not have fit as well in the traditionally published market as it does in the indie market, just because for example, the love interest is actually like 25 years old or something, even though the main character is like 17 or 18 or whatever. So that would not fly in a YA book, and there are some adult aspects to the romance. You would almost think that this was a new adult book, except that it's also totally not. It's very much a YA book in its narrative and in what the author says it is as well. She refers to it as YA. I do really love this series. The last book was not my favorite, but I still really adore the series overall, and I actually got approved just recently to read the arc of the spin-off series, the first book in the spin-off series, Air Awakens Vortex Chronicles, and I'm so excited to read that, like soon. It comes out next month. The audiobook that I listened to this month is Knife of Dreams by Robert Jordan. This is our Watalong read-along book of this month. So our live show for this is going to be on February 2nd for those of you guys who are joining in on reading this series with us and discussing this series with us. So this book was the last one that Robert Jordan wrote before he passed away and said, "Hey, Brandon Sanderson, fill in the rest of this series for me. Thanks, dude." Also, the previous installment in the series left off at a total cliffhanger, so this is the one where we got to figure out what is going on from there, and obviously I'm not going to go too in-depth with it because we're already going to have a live show on it, and also it's like the 11th book in a series. Those were all the books that I finished in the month of January, but now we are on to the DNF, and that is The Weight of Stars by Kay Ankrum, and this is a book that is actually, it's one of my most anticipated releases. It was not in my top 6 anticipated releases of 2019 video, but it was certainly in the top 10. I was really excited for this book. As soon as I was approved to read it on NetGalley, I jumped right on it. I immediately started reading it, and I got about 60% of the way in before just feeling like I was just so bored out of my mind that I couldn't possibly continue. So this is billed as kind of a Black lesbians in space. It's billed as a sci-fi. It is queer, and it's diverse, and I loved like hearing about it. I thought it was going to be such a good book, but really it's just kind of about kids in school, and it had little plot at all. So I kept reading it and kept reading it. I'm just not into books about kids in school. I did not know that's what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot more exciting than that. But it was just super, super boring, and I just could not get any farther into it once I got to 60%. So there were a lot of things about this book that just didn't make sense overall about the entire plot of it. So, for example, so it is about a girl who meets this other girl in school and finds out, she realizes pretty quickly that that this other girl is the offspring of a lady who right after giving birth, went on a like one-way trip to space, and was not going to come back. So that this girl is basically growing up knowing that her mom is in space somewhere. So the main character tries to be friends with her, and a teacher even tells her that she should be trying to be friends with this girl, but this girl hates her guts for no discernible reason, and kind of just, rather than saying, okay, well, I guess that's not working out, you should probably just leave her alone, let someone else make friends with her, the teacher just keeps trying to get her to be friends with her. So I didn't understand what the deal was there. Then the main character is kind of indirectly responsible for this girl falling off of a roof, totally by accident, not intentional. But this girl's dad sees that that happened and he totally blames her. But what does he do? He says, hey, come to my house, fill in for my daughter because she sits on the roof every day listening for messages from her mom in space. So you should totally just like do that while she's in the hospital. Like, he couldn't do that. Someone else couldn't do that. He had to get like a girl who his daughter clearly hates to do that. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Then, yeah, so there were like a lot of things like that that didn't make any sense. There's even a part where the main character tells her friends, oh, so I'm going to break into this outer space organization's headquarters, and I'm going to use this girl's dad's ID from back when he was an intern like a decade ago, blah, blah, blah. And I researched that they're still using the same security system. And I'm just like, dude, first of all, why would they that long after he had worked there? And second of all, nobody's IDs are still active if they no longer work there. So, like, literally, I worked at a freaking warehouse last year, and they deactivate our IDs like within 3 months, even if we don't go there to tell them or anything like that. Within 3 months, they're deactivated. So nothing about this book made sense. Nothing about this book seemed to be there. It seemed like there was going to be any discernible plot whatsoever. So at 60% in, I DNF'd it, and I was really bummed to do that. So anyway, those are the books that I read in the first half of January. If you have read any of them, please let me know what your thoughts are, because I would definitely love to talk about these books and see if you thought similar things, different things, etc., etc. And I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!